try to do a rambling live one more time while I'm driving again. And just complete my thoughts. What I wanted to say in the first video, kind of about the world computer. Basically, what I was thinking about was loosely based on, or maybe inspired by, the Talking Heads movie, True Stories. I would encourage everyone to, watch whatever you want. It's a very interesting movie. There's a lot of interesting things he brings up in the movie. There's like this crazy conspiracy portion in the middle, which is insane, is in a mainstream movie, to the song Puzzling Evidence, where he talks about like the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations and all types of crazy stuff. But a lot of the movies about computers, microchips. He even mentions like they want to make AI and robots, and this is back in, I forget what year that came out, 84 or something like that. But specifically, he brings up the concept of circuit board cities, specifically in that movie. There's a part where the guy who runs the town, like the richest man in the town, some kind of property developer, is like, imagine this is the town, Virgil, Texas. And then he says a few things. He's like, microprocessor, mainframe, hard drive. I don't remember exactly what all he says, but he's describing, he has all this food on the table that he's describing as parts of the town. Like, this is Initech or whatever I forget what the big technology company is called in the show, but it's in Virgil, Texas. And he's describing them as buildings and roads and people and parts of the town, but he's also calling them like components of a computer. And it's this whole song and thing. He's like, people are leaving the big corporations and inventing their own things, but how do we keep them in Virgil? And it just struck me like, wow, it's a really early, maybe that concept's always been around, but he really like nails it in that movie, the circuit board city things. And there's mad weird stuff with the movie if you look into it. Like, David Byrne says supposedly he used, I don't know if it's supposed, it's just like a real fact, I guess, he used 50 sets of twins in the movie. If you followed any kind of like occult stuff, Nazi occult stuff, like CIA, MK Ultra stuff, whatever in general, is a strong thread of like twins. So David Byrne from the Talking Heads supposedly uses 50 sets of twins in this movie. And another aspect of it I wanted to touch on was there's another part in the movie where he's driving by, showing all these highways, like big interstate overpasses and stuff, and he says, someone said that highways are the cathedrals of our time. He says, not me, but someone said that. There's a bunch of things in this movie that catch my attention, but the highways are the cathedrals of our time. Like, okay, what are cathedrals for? They're for making some kind of connection out of this world. Aside from Antiquitech or whatever other things you might think cathedrals are for, there's like the most basic level of like a spiritual connection. Prayer, worship, some kind of rising above the mundane world is included in cathedrals. And you could go into all types of other things like alchemical encodings and magical things encoded in cathedrals. But he said, it also fits back into the world computer and the circuit board cities, because if it is if you're thinking about it as like a computer and not just cities, but the whole construct, I've always thought of, the cars moving around, the people, even on foot, but especially the cars, are like the electrons, the electricity moving around the circuit. And it is very predictable. What I was saying before about the AI being able to predict your movement so far ahead. Like if you think about traffic, it's got to be like 97% of traffic is work related. It's extremely predictable. Like it's got to be close to like 100% accuracy, even way down the road, predicting where you're going to drive to and from. It's very routine, and that has to account for like a huge proportion of traffic is going to work. And not only does it know your motivation, which is money, but it's like very patterned for most people. Not just that they're pursuing money, but like it's very predictable. But if it were a computer and the people, the traffic, the cars were the electrons moving through the circuits, then you would have a couple of gates, like what would be logic gates in a computer, in a circuit. One would be obviously traffic lights, would be circuits where you have to stop. You can stop the flow of electricity. You can stop the flow of traffic and let it go again when you want, just like how a computer works, on, off, on, off. An integrated circuit is like all these little gates within it. Now I'm holding up a microphone like close to my mouth, off the earbuds. No blunts for me. But the one you have, okay, so there would be two gates I can think of off the top of my head that would be logic gates in a computer. One is traffic lights. The other one is entrances, exits onto interstates. Okay, that's like a switch in a circuit or a logic gate. Traffic lights, turn, any kind of option where you have a turn, and any kind of option to exit a highway or exit a road or on board a highway. And like I said, and I was thinking about the concept of quantum computers. Even if it is bullshit, there's something to it, like it's where it's not a yes or a no answer. It's like not a regular logic circuit. It's a quantum bit, not a regular bit. It's not just on or off. It can be both or neither. And I was just thinking about this. I mean, even before I've really thought about it completely in these terms of the circuit board cities and the traffic as electric, but the highways as cathedrals. Over the last few years, there's been something in me where, like, yeah, in order to be unpredictable, like I know where I'm supposed to be going or where I plan to go most of the time. But sometimes, most of the time I do, but sometimes I just don't. I purposely will just unexpectedly go somewhere else, miss what I'm supposed to do. And even back when I was like really working a real job, I started realizing sometimes like I might be a little late. People are calling me, telling me to get in. I realized at some point, like, yo, I'm going to get yelled at the same amount if I'm 15 minutes late or 20 minutes late. Like, I'm going to take a wrong turn anyway, even though I'm not already late for work. I'm going to take a wrong turn on purpose. Which, yeah, I know a lot of people would just be like, that is psychotic. Who would take a wrong turn on purpose when you're already late for work? Well, I would. Because there's something in me that says, that is when I see the most interesting things. That is when I meet the most interesting people. That is when I see what I'm not supposed to see. And it doesn't mean I'm totally unreliable, but it just means I don't want to be ever totally predictable. And it doesn't mean I don't always do it either. But, like, and I also think another aspect is most people don't consider their choices very often. They're running on autopilot, like a vast majority of the time. And if I'm driving from the mountains all the way down to the city in Philadelphia, like, of course I'm not going to get off at every exit and get back on and take every diversion, but I really do every exit consider at least my choice to get off. I think, maybe I will get off. Maybe I'll get off. And I don't. 99% of the time I don't. You know, I drive where I'm going. But I do, frequently enough, take the wrong exit or just a random exit or a turn for no reason or go the opposite way I'm supposed to go. That, when extrapolated out, like, there's no way I don't feel predictable. I feel like I'm off script, and I feel like I can be an unaccounted for variable. Like, I don't feel like I can be predicted 10 years out, when you never know. And so you want to make as many choices as possible. Like, even if it is the choice you expect, just the action of actually thinking, wow, I actually do have a choice each step along the way to divert from this plan I had. Just that action of making a choice consciously already makes it more unpredictable, and I feel like gives you more novelty. And in the same way that, like David Byrne said in the movie, someone said highways are like the cathedrals of our times. Like, I do feel like they're a gate in a way. Like, every turn you could take off a road or an interstate, every option you have to turn at a traffic light which should go straight or vice versa or whatever, is almost some way a gate where you can diverge into a different reality. And yeah, I know that sounds really woo crazy and whatnot, but you could even just, if you want to think of it in more mundane terms, like if you are just committed to being a little more unpredictable, like, your reality is going to change. And by being unpredictable in that way, maybe it's not like a real quantum computer, but like the metaphor of a quantum computer, where, like, how do they solve a problem? Like, it's somehow they entangle with a universe where the problem is already solved. Like, the computer doesn't actually have to compute it. Like, what if you could, instead of a binary, I'm going to work, yes, I'm going to work, no, I'm not going to work. Like, I don't know where I'm going. Like, what if you can pass, if you have some kind of goal in mind, if you can somehow just start passing closer and closer through these gates to the reality where what you want already exists or is already real, you know? And even better, hopefully you can eventually get to a point, I mean, I don't think I'm not there either, but it's my goal to where I don't really want anything. I'm just appreciating my life, you know, and just grateful for every experience I have. But if you don't want anything, even then, there's still the, like, you're still always going to want at least novelty, like more experience, better experience, richer experience. My voice is getting hoarse. I'm not supposed to talk this much twice in one day. Anyway, yeah, David Byrne, check out that movie, True Stories. He does the circuit board cities thing. He says highways are the cathedrals of our times. There's a lot of other weird things in the movie. It's also a movie I've seen multiple times over the course of my life, like over the past 20 years or something, and I always liked it, but it never, like, I watched it twice over this winter, like in the last 3 months. And the last time I watched it just hit me in a way that it's never hit me before. I was like, whoa. I don't know if it's just because I'm older. I've gone through more, you know, spiritual journey in life, or just more difficult, painful circumstances and more good and happy circumstances. I don't know what it is, but it just hit me in a totally different way, where it's just like art. Like, I could almost cry at every scene for a reason I couldn't even exactly tell you. And I know David Byrne, I'm sure you can find some videos, I'm sure, of him saying all types of stupid shit about what's going on now. Because that's how it, like, everyone knows to get to that level of visibility, you're going to have to make some serious compromises. But it's still art to me. There's something really going on. Or maybe it's just the 50 pairs of twins. Maybe he's just weaved mad voodoo magic in the movie or something. I don't know. But yeah, that was something I was thinking about, the traffic being the electricity and being unpredictable, going through the gates, the logic gates of the circuit would be the stoplights and the on and off ramps of the highways. And are they actual gates into other realities, however metaphorically or like literally you want to take that. Is that why David Byrne says highways are the cathedrals of our time? Because it's definitely something just beyond the structural aspect of it. So that's part 2 of the world computer. Another thing I meant to mention is I was thinking about the Philadelphia experiment. I was, probably because I reread Ross Ben's Mystery Philadelphia book. Partly just because I respect his work, I just wanted to refresh myself on it. And also just because I want to do my Ghost Fights series, which is going to be like an on-the-ground architecture, street view, series about mostly Philadelphia, maybe other places, but definitely Philadelphia. And I don't want to repeat a lot of what he has already covered. But part of it, he talks about the Philadelphia experiment in the book, and it triggered my memory of my grandfather, who's dead now, but who I lived with and kind of raised me when I was young. Like, my mom was real young. She was going to school and working and had a social life. She was a young woman, and I was mostly raised by my grandfather. And I know that he was an engineer at Philadelphia Gear. And I wish I asked him, tons more things when he was alive, but I didn't. And I was thinking about the Philadelphia experiment, and Philadelphia Gear, I know he told me he was involved in World War II, something about engineering minesweepers, and then after the war working as an engineer at Philadelphia Gear. And basically they made all types of gears and parts, but all like humongous gears. And it's a very old company. They were like one of the main companies, from what I understand, involved in like all the setting up power plants in the beginning of electricity and setting up all these big scale hydro, all types of power plants. They needed these big gears, and going installing these big super gears made to very exact specifications to be used all over the world. And he worked there, and somehow it just popped into my head. I'm like, I wonder if that would have been involved in the Philadelphia experiment at all. It would be, would be Philadelphia Gear. I wonder if Philadelphia Gear was involved in making any of this equipment. It's like a huge gear company. And anyway, it led me into just looking into Philadelphia Gear. It's just a weird... Thank you. Blessings to you too, brother. Just, I did a little Philadelphia Gear research. I can't read a whole lot of chat. I'm driving still. But, I'll read it afterwards, hopefully, if it ever pops up. YouTube might just hose me on it. But, so I was doing research on Philadelphia Gear, just trying to look more into my grandfather, who raised me. And, basically, I'll try and make it quick. A building that I've probably worked at more than any other location in my life since I was a teenager, mostly in painting, construction, all the landscaping, different things, but always at this one building, because someone who I worked for had like a relationship with the people at this building. At one time, it was a company called GSI. It's in King of Prussia that Matt from Quantum of Conscience always mentions. That's the city it's in, town it's in. It's a big kind of, the King of Prussia mall's there, but it's also a big like corporate office park town. And there's a building there, not a special building, there's tons of buildings there, but a company called GSI used to occupy this building, and they ran the online merchandise presence and all online marketing for basically like not every company, but just tons of huge companies, like all the major sports leagues, NFL, NBA, NHL, like Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger, Kay Jewelers. They were all up on the wall, all over the building. I just go on forever, all these huge brands. And they had one building that was just like a giant computer logistics center. And they had another building that was like an art center, where they actually had models and photographers in and out all the time, where they would actually do the photo shoots and set up the websites for like all these companies, like tons of companies. They basically innovated a big portion of like online sales of like, I guess it would be mostly for clothing and jewelry and stuff like that. But a lot of all the big sports leagues with their clients also for like jerseys and stuff like that. And anyway, over the years, I worked here over and over and over, more than any other building I've ever worked at. I worked at this one building, right? For this company, GSI. Later, they get bought out by eBay. And some weird situation happens where like someone got accused. They bring in like a way more official, like hardcore security contractor once it becomes eBay, like headquarters. And some situation happens where someone gets accused of stealing something. And I didn't get in trouble. I was running the crew. Like we were like cleared. It wasn't us. Like it was someone who worked there. We got cleared of like whatever the theft was, but somehow it ended up having me getting run through a background check. And because I had a criminal record, even though I had been working there without incident for like a decade, getting kicked off the premises, like permanently banned from this eBay headquarters premises, even though I didn't actually do anything. It's called True Stories, the Talking Heads movie. True Stories. So I get banned from this place. But anyway, even after that, I spent years still working around in like a snow removal, landscaping capacities around the buildings, just like never going in again because I was banned from there. But anyway, I know this has taken forever, and this might not be really significant to anyone else, but I'm looking up Philadelphia Gear, and the building has since changed hands again. And this building where I've worked at more than any other building in my life is the address for Philadelphia Gear now. It just blew my mind. Like where my grandfather used to work and I was researching for the Philadelphia experiment. I was like, this building, I was like, that's the building I worked at. That's obviously it's not their machine shop or like production facility. It's like their front end business center building now that used to be eBay. It is like now the building for Philadelphia Gear. I know that was a really long story with not a great payoff. It was just a personal synchronicity that was just super bizarre. I'm trying to research my grandfather and the Philadelphia experiment and Philadelphia Gear, and it's just based now out of this building where I've been working my whole life. Yeah, pretty much free association. I'm going to wrap it up soon, though. Just because I'm thinking about my grandfather now. Just something fun. Just when I think about his life sometimes, he was, I think, 97 years old when he died. Quite a few years ago now. On Thanksgiving or around Thanksgiving. But, number one, when he was born, like I think cars were invented, but like people weren't driving cars. He lived in Philadelphia. Just thinking about a lot of it. But this guy, I believe he was, well, I know this. I don't know exactly what year he was born, but I've worked it all out before. And I'll tell you this, at some point when he's like 8, 9, I just think it's funny over the last 2 years, people like to make references like, I mean mainstream people who are completely delusional are like, wow, we've made it through such a disaster. We're such heroes in this hard time. And yeah, I get it, it is hard, but people like to act like they've been through like the bombing of Dresden or something. They like to think like the last 2 years, like, wow, I'm a hero. I've been through like Europe in World War II or something. And just the amount of patting themselves on the back. And like, I'm talking about people that have gone along with everything and not put up any resistance at all. And want to act like they've been through such a difficult time with the illness. And I was just thinking sometimes about my grandfather's life. Like, when this dude was like 9 or 10, 8 to 10 years old, World War I starts. His father is drafted into World War I, right? Comes home from World War I's going on. His father comes home, within a few years is institutionalized at a young age, like at my age now, as like I forget what they call it, but basically for like schizophrenia, like manic depression, schizophrenia, something like that. Never let out, permanently institutionalized from like his early 30s for the rest of his life. So my grandfather goes through World War I. I mean, he's not there, but his dad comes home, is apparently psychotic, or at least they said he was psychotic, and so he loses his dad. His dad is permanently institutionalized, right? Then they go into the Great Depression. Like, he tells me these stories about like collecting rags to sell to the rag man, and just all this crazy stuff we can't even like understand. Then at like 17, I'm probably getting these ages a little messed up. I think he was born in 1914, if I'm correct. Then at some point he goes into World War II. So how old would he be in like 1942? He's born in 1914, 24, 34, he's 20. 8 more years, he's 28. So then in his 20s, he goes into World War II. Then comes home and starts a family at that time. So by the time this dude's in his 30s, he's been through World War I, his dad going through World War I, being institutionalized permanently, single mom in the 1920s, going through the Great Depression, going through World War II. And I've been hard on this generation at sometimes. Like, how could they have let all this happen? Like, all this stuff that led up to now that happened at that time. But if you think of just like the meat grinder, just like the haunted house, just the non-stop trauma. I mean, like real huge level trauma that happened at that time. It's just insane that, like, my dad, 1934, yeah. Born in 1889, yeah. Yeah, if we think about just what they went through by the time they were, like, in their 30s, it's just, I don't think they had a lot of time to stop and consider, like, hey, how do I feel about monetary policy and the introduction of the Federal Reserve and the taking us off the gold standard and, all this stuff. Like, they were just, I mean, these people were bombarded, and we still are today in our own way. Like, I've said before, just like the opiate crisis. Like, in my time growing up, I can't tell you how many people I grew up with are dead, and like a few just in jail forever, or for crazy drug-related stuff, or whatever, like murders and all types of stuff. Like, but I wouldn't be surprised if number of people that died in my generation in like the drug crisis was like greater, at least equal to the amount in the era of like World War II or Vietnam or anything else. Like, every era has this just constant bombardment of trauma. Ours is just like the war on drugs and like the pharmaceutical industrial complex and the mind control industrial complex, and it's something different for every generation, but we're all just bombarded by this non-stop like meat grinder of trauma that most people never have the time to stop and reflect on what is really going on. All right, that's all I got for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in again. I just wanted to, the movie I was talking about was True Stories from the 80s, Talking Heads movie, directed by David Byrne. It's like crazy Circuit Board City stuff, a crazy whole conspiracy segment in it. Oh, yeah, one thing else I wanted to mention about the movie. It's all about this, I assume, fictional town, Virgil, Texas. David Byrne used 50 sets of twins to make the movie for, like, I assume magical purposes. 100%. Alan, more soldiers kill themselves than die in combat. Absolutely. Like, I should have included that in my generation's, like, mass die-off. Yeah, not just drug overdoses and, like, violent crime, but also, yeah, a huge portion are suicides also. Or where it's hard to tell what it was. You know, like an overdose or suicide or a car accident or a suicide or whatever. But, true stories. Oh, okay. This is the last thing. It's Virgil, Texas. And the whole movie has this undercurrent of computers, technology, the birth of the microchip, circuit board cities, people as parts of these computers, but also like, hey, they want to develop AI and robots to take the places of people. And this was way back in the 80s. He's talking about this stuff. It's like a low-key kind of undercurrent. Not even low-key. It's like an undercurrent through the whole movie about AI, robots, computers. And even the anticipating of, like, some say this is going to be Silicon Valley someday. It's going to be here in Texas. He talks about Texas Instruments, the company. But the town is Virgil, Texas. And it just occurred to me in Dante's Inferno. Dante is led through the layers of hell by Virgil. The Greek poet Virgil is his guide through hell, the 9 circles of hell. And that is where the movie is set, in this fictional town of Virgil. And I imagine David Byrne would make that connection on purpose, because he's no dummy, that's for sure. You can think whatever you want about him. Virgil, Texas, the birth of AI, leading Dante through the 9 circles of hell. All right, that's all I got. Oh, I should mention the New Jersey video. I saw some people thought it was a hitchhiker I picked up. Some people thought it was my wife. It's both. It's my wife, and she is also a hitchhiker. You were both right. And she doesn't really talk like that. We just like having fun sometimes, pretending we're from Staten Island. And she is from New Jersey and is like a hardcore New Jersey lover. For the people from New Jersey who were offended, yeah, I just thought I'd clear that up. No actual ill will against New Jersey. Although I do actually harbor some ill will against New Jersey. But not her. Don't blame her. All right, good night, everyone. Sleep tight. God bless y'all.